Short Story Collection 3 Rem's Very Ordinary Happy Day. Rem, the Roswell residence's first head maid, wakes up early in the morning. A certain room at the mansion's east wing. Rem wakes up on her bed, and what she wakes up to is a dawn with a sky still left with traces of the night. Signs of the morning appear towards east with a faint glimmer of light mixed with the dark night sky. The girl laying down on the bed opens her eyes quietly as if she had heard the footsteps of dawn. She had a small body with her small hands and legs. Her rather short hair that had equivalent lengths on all sides was a bright sky blue, and her round light blue eyes, which had a color similar to her hair, were charming. Her features, indicative of youth, were cute. However, she herself was completely unaware of how much she excelled in her looks. Rem, phew! She wakes her body up with a small yawn. Rem steps onto the floor from her bed while wearing her blue nightgown. She was very good at waking up. When she stood up without being pulled back by drowsiness, Rem stretched in the middle of the room. She wipes off the tears in the corner of her eyes, bidding farewell to the traces of her dreams. Rem, I need to wash my face and change. Speaking of the things she had to do was a secret habit of Rem, which she did before she started her work. Putting things in order and organizing her actions was an essential ritual for Rem, as a person who was aware of how she wasn't very good at dealing with things. She was barely satisfying her duties as the mansion's head maid by doing the ritual in secret, or at least, that's what Rem thought. She heads towards the bathroom with a towel in her hand, while she organizes her thoughts and washes her face. Her loosened thinking tenses up from the cold water. After she wipes her face with the soft towel, she goes back to her room, and it was time to change her clothes. After she dropped her thin nightgown onto the bed, this young lady's soft skin was exposed, as she had only her underwear on. Rem was small in comparison to other 17-year-olds, but her body's non-flatness was rich with similarities of a woman. In particular, her breasts had been growing considerably in these past few months, which also annoyed her. Rem lets out a seemingly melancholic sigh and turns around to the closet. She had many uniforms organized in a row in this place, stored with clothes. Identical maid outfits were hung up. She picks one set of clothes without hesitation and starts to put on the uniform that she was used to wearing. She had actually been living like this and wearing her maid outfit for almost 10 years. 10 years, it was the same date and the same time when the Oni village went into ruins and she and her sister Ram were found by Roswell. For Rem, it was literally more than half her lifetime. That was the only time period where Rem would put on this maid outfit. She had no displeasure or questions towards that, and she thought she'd continue on like that, but, Rem, I wonder if it'd be weird to wear different clothes every now and then. Rem sees her own image reflected on the dresser installed on the closet and looks carefully at her uniform. It was standard for a maid to have a well-kept appearance, and it was the minimum preparation done to avoid embarrassing herself in front of the master. That was what Frederica told her many times, which was a person Rem followed as an example for being a maid, and who also told her about the etiquettes. Rem, of course, followed those teachings, and she didn't fail to spend time on her personal appearance. However, she was more enthusiastic about it in these past several weeks and would check on it briefly. That being said, the enthusiasm was more about her preferring to be cute, rather than it was preferring to be perfect. Rem, let's leave it at this. Rem turns around many times in front of the dresser and puts an end to the preparations that didn't have an end in sight. After she finished putting on her very exposing maid outfit, she put on her flower hair ornaments and she was done. She turns over the edge of her short skirt, exits to the corridor in a lively way, and takes a deep breath. The corridor of the mansion was filled with the morning's cold air. Rem breathed in a lot of that air and started to walk happily. The place she headed towards was not the room next door, which was the room of her older sister, Ram. Rem. Good morning. Rem says her greetings with a very thin-like voice and steps into the room. The design of the room was the same as Rem's private room, but its interior was designed delicately based on the owner's personality. It still didn't have much property in it, but she felt that even that really emphasized his character. Every night and every morning, Rem saw it, she felt her chest warm up. It was a room used by a servant. It was not Rem's room. It was not Ram's room. Excluding the sisters, this servant living in the Roswell residence could only be one person. In other words, this was that person's room, Rem. Subaru, Rem looks down on the boy lying down on the bed in this dim room and calls that name. However, that voice also seemed like it was vanishing and that it was something fragile, so there was no way it reached this boy, who was still in the middle of dreaming. But she said her greetings before she entered the room, so she called out to the sleeping boy. Rem, so Subaru is an oversleeper, considering how he still isn't waking up. Rem uses that type of reason to justify her actions as she stands beside the bed. And then she looks at the sleeping boy. She looks at Natsuki Subaru's sleeping face, and the impulse she experiences inside her causes her to loosen her lips greatly. Subaru was lying down on the left side of the bed and was sleeping while holding onto the blanket with his arms. Subaru was sleeping with a black jersey. They were reproduced clothes that Rem made by copying the foreign appearance Subaru had originally. She felt warm and fluffy inside from seeing him use those clothes as his sleepwear. She didn't just feel warm and fluffy, though. He would usually have his bangs up, but he had them down on his defenseless sleeping face, and it had a childish cuteness to it. He had lips that let out surprisingly quiet breathing and pretty fingers that were holding the blanket fiddling with it. His legs were short. He was drooling on his pillow. It was cute. Rem. Subaru is cute. Such blind devotion is what she thinks, as even she was a little amazed herself, but she couldn't betray the way she viewed it all. Actually, perhaps it couldn't be helped because she felt that way. It makes Rem's white cheeks blush. She enjoys herself with Subaru's sleeping face and appearance. She sharpens all of her senses. It was the readiness to pick up all of the signals Subaru gave out. She continues that observation that was exaggerated to the point of it being ridiculous for a short time and says, Rem, that's it for today. I can't take much more. I have to let it go. Her heartbeat speeds up. She becomes aware that not just her cheeks were having a fever, but her ears were too. Rem somehow restrains herself and pulls her attention away from Subaru's sleeping face. She steps back. The boy is completely remotely removed from her field of vision, and she somehow recovers herself. Rem, that was close. A little more and I'd lose control of myself. Rem puts her hand on her forehead and gives herself credit for her self-control. Taking a peek on Subaru's sleeping face was her daily routine, every morning. But not once did she test if her offensive lust and her defensive self were settled down. It was always a close battle. Furthermore, it was as if she wasn't aware of how she had suspicions of following her desires when she was giving in to impulses from seeing his sleeping face. Rem, I really did try my best this morning, if I may say so myself. Geez, Subaru is a sinful person. If he was awake, then surely he would have asserted false accusations from those brief words. Rem leaves those words along with a hot sigh and quickly goes to leave Subaru's room. She completes the first thing she did in the morning for her daily routine, and then this time Rem heads towards Ram's room. Rem, good morning. Whenever Rem entered her sister's room, the voice she called out to the inside with was of course about as quiet as the buzzing of a mosquito. The lights were turned off in the room and it was dim, but in comparison to Subaru's room, it was pretty bright. That was due to it getting closer to the morning, and it was proof of Rem wasting her time in Subaru's room. That being said, it didn't hinder her work and it didn't cause her to be late. She was waking up early for time to see his sleeping face. Just from that, the amount of sleep she got decreased. However, her daily was not just about physical strength, but about willpower as well. After all, she was just aiming to replenish her willpower. It was not just Subaru's sleeping face that did that. Rem, sister is lovely today too. Ram was lying down on the bed facing upwards. Rem lets out a faint smile at Ram, whose sleeping face was exposed. Ram was Rem's twin sister. Their appearance made them look like two peas in a pod, is what she's been told various times, but Rem did not believe it at all. She had a stern face and light pink eyes that were full of strong, intellectual self-confidence. She had beautiful, brilliant pink hair that even had transient glossiness. She had a perfectly balanced body and slender, flexible limbs. Her sister was perfect no matter what she looked at. While she was a younger sister, who improperly copied her only with her outward appearance. Rem had people tell her that she had her good points, so she tried her best to not feel like she was indebted, but still, sister is my role model. She was always full of confidence. She was always right. She was always strong, no matter what. That was who Ram was. She felt indebted to her sister who was like that, but she also was proud of her. So Rem put in her love, respect, and deep affection into her voice and called out to Ram. Rem, sister, it's morning. Please wake up. She felt guilty for her figure that slept peacefully, but she hardened her heart and body and shook Ram awake. Doing this and waking up Ram was also part of her daily routine before starting her work. Ram softly whispering, "Just 5 more minutes," was also an everyday thing Ram did when she opened her eyes from being called to. Even Rem wanted to let Ram sleep to her heart's content if she could. Rem, you can't do that, sister. If you don't hurry, change, and get ready, then you won't set a good example for Subaru, who is an apprentice. Moreover, Subaru still hasn't recovered from the witch beast injuries, so I don't really want to make him do work and I feel bad. Ram, you're more worried about Barusu than you are worried about me, so I don't want to wake up. Rem, sister, please don't say such pitiful things, but if you take a day off, then just me and Subaru will do the work. Okay. Sister, today you can. Ram, actually, I'll get up. All right, help me change, Rem. Ram bravely takes back those previous remarks as she suddenly raises her upper body and puts her hands up in the air. Rem opens her eyes wide at her sister, quickly changing her mind, and then lets out a happy smile. Rem, sister, you are hasty, huh? We do need to change your clothes, but first we need to comb your hair. You have quite the bed hair today. Did you sleep late? Ram, I didn't have good sleep because you haven't been sleeping with me lately, Rem. Rem, geez, and how many years has it been since you and I slept together again? Rem combs Ram's hair with the comb she took out while being immersed in the nostalgic memories. Her glossy pink hair was smooth, so it was as if it was dancing in her hands. The thin feel she felt with her fingers should have been about the same as Rem's. That's what she suddenly thought. Rem, perhaps I'll try growing out my hair. The reason Rem had her hair short was because she wanted to have the same hairdo as Ram. If she matched her looks and features by having the same hairdo as her sister and the same clothes, making people say they're 2 peas in a pod, she felt like she'd be closer to being like her. Doing that was also Rem's race and dared her. However, now she thought about if it was okay to change that childlike obsession. Rem, sister, would you find it weird if I grew out my hair? Ram, are you asking if I'd think it'd be weird? Or are you asking if other people would think it's weird? Based on that, my answer will be different. Rem, would Subaru think it's weird? When she tried to talk about the source for her anxiety, Ram bluntly let out a deep sigh. Ram, why are you saying this so suddenly? Did Barusu say something to you? Rem, no, it's not that. It's just I thought I'd comb sister's hair and so. Ram, Lady Amelia did make her hair long and she does have pretty hair. She easily sees through her intention of covering up her reasons, and then Rem lets out a wry smile. Ram responds to the hints of her smile by shaking her head in disappointment. Rem, you'd of course look cute even with long hair, no doubt about it. It makes me want to pull Barusu and tear him up. Rem, sister. Rem feels both joy and unease at Ram, whose voice and attitude were stern. She felt glad about Ram worrying about her, and she felt uneasy from thinking about how there may be tension between Subaru and Ram. Rem, sister, do you hate Subaru? Ram, me hating him and me feeling that he isn't appropriate for my cute Rem are 2 different matters. Ram gives a flat denial, which makes Rem reflexively open her eyes wide at her. However, soon after, it changed into a smile filled with emotion. In other words, Ram's reply just now meant she didn't hate Subaru. Rem, thank you, sister. I also am proud of my sister. Ram, oh, Weelal, of course. I am an older sister that one would want to take pride in after all. They slipped off topic, but the confirmation of their sisterly love causes Rem to feel happy. Ram begins to hum in a seemingly very good mood. She also was unusually skillful with her humming. In response to that humming, Rem also starts to pleasantly move the comb again and gently styles her sister's hair. This was also a ritual for the important sisterly bond between Ram and Rem, which was done every morning. 2. In the Roswell residence's spacious courtyard, Subaru and Emilia were having a friendly chat about something that appeared to be fun. Rem loosened her lips while looking down at that from afar. Rem. Subaru looks cute with how he seems to be having fun. Subaru's state of being merry filled Rem's heart with so many emotions to the point of them overflowing. In this courtyard at a time this early in the morning, Emilia's contract with the lesser spirits. She was spending the one time in the day where she'd interact with the spirits. That was a habit Emilia continued to have ever since she came to the mansion. And then Subaru also showed up to these things, which was a habit he continued ever since he came to the mansion. Beatrice, interrupting the invaluable time of spirits, he really is a hopeless person. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Rem from the side, who was looking down at the courtyard. She was focused on the garden, so she was a bit startled from having not noticed that presence. After that, the appearance of the person who called out to her gave her an even bigger startle. Rem, Miss Beatrice. Beatrice, who was standing right next to Rem, responds to her calling out by folding her arms without giving an answer. It was a girl with a lovely appearance. She had her faint-colored hair put into drills, and she wore a magnificent dress that had a lot of frills. Her looks were also well kept like a doll and looked perfect. Her looks were lovely. There was no better word to describe them. Rem, you can't rival sister though, Beatrice. I can't help but feel like I've suddenly been insulted for some reason. Rem, that's not true. Nobody can be compared to sister. I think Miss Beatrice has her own good points. Please don't get depressed. Beatrice, the more you speak, the more it's becoming a plan to make me unhappy, I suppose. The intention to cheer her up provokes anger from Beatrice, who is irritated, and so Rem says my apologies to her and Bode. She wasn't trying to anger her, but for some reason something irritated her. Rem, are you perhaps hungry? It's just a little more time until breakfast. Beatrice, I'm displeased from being hungry. Don't make fun of me. These mansion guys are intolerable with their behavior, I suppose. Everything is that guy's fault? Beatrice says those words and looks towards the courtyard with a frown on her face. What she saw was Subaru and Emilia still continuing their friendly chat. She then says, Beatrice, that guy is influencing you, and it's also showing in your sister, I suppose. Nothing can be more irritating than this. Rem, influence, right. It's because Subaru is lovely. Beatrice, why is it that you smiled there? I'm now starting to regret my decision to start a conversation with you. When Rem smiled at the topic of Subaru, Beatrice put her hand on her forehead and sighed. She murmured those words while having that worn-out state, and Rem recovered from her initial startling. Putting aside Beatrice's regret, it was rare for her and Rem to have silly conversations. Also, whenever Beatrice was the one to start the conversation, the amount of strange occurrences that happened were enough to count on one's hand. Rem, I'll have to write about this thing with Miss Beatrice in today's diary entry today too, huh? Beatrice, oh, you keep a diary. Quite methodical, I suppose. Rem, yes. I started doing it lately to record the daily things that happen with Subaru and sister. There are still 6 volumes, so I'm embarrassed about being poor with writing, but... Beatrice, 6 volumes. It's only been about 1 month since that guy came to the mansion. Rem was embarrassed from her own incompetence, although for some reason Beatrice was shivering with her face. She had a countless amount of things written in her diary, but her literary talent and the amount of time she had weren't very permitting. It was next to impossible to express Subaru's charm and Ram's wonderfulness. So, Rem, would it be conceited for me to think, but even then someday, I wonder. Beatrice, I'm not the one who knows, I suppose. Do whatever you want. Geez, if it's just that, then it's as if I was worrying too much, I suppose. Rem, worrying too much, you say. Beatrice, I don't want to get involved with trouble by giving you something like a day off again. So before it gets to that, I just thought to look over your condition moderately, I suppose. Beatrice confesses that, with a sigh unsuitable for her appearance with a face that seemed to be pouting. Those words cause Rem to choke. She opens her eyes wide. It was a bolt out of the blue. The trouble Beatrice was talking about was surely the Rem's day off that happened the other day. It was a sudden day off proposed to Roswell by Subaru out of consideration for Rem's health. Rem was allowed to rest, and it was the day where everyone at the mansion carried out the duties for the work of that time. To be honest, Rem got startled from the sudden proposal, and she felt sorry for troubling them. She also had unease about leaving the work up to them, but as for the result, it was also a time when she was able to truly feel how she was very blessed. Ever since then, it seemed that she was trying to put more and more of her soul into her work, but it seemed that Rem wasn't the only one who believed that the circumstances didn't end with just that day. Rem, did you perhaps worry about me? Beatrice. Rem, thank you, Miss Beatrice. Those feelings really make me happy. I understand. From now on, I'll have you let me work with everything I have in me even more. Beatrice, that's exactly what I'm telling you to stop doing. Loosen up and make sure you don't get tired, I suppose. If you don't, it'll cause trouble again. Beatrice swings her hands and knocks off Rem's declaration, who renewed her enthusiasm. When that rejection caused Rem to hang her head in despondence, Beatrice pulled on her drills with her fingers and said, Beatrice, it's weird to get tired even when we have more employees than before, I suppose. I know that he is useless too, but making that half-man cooperate well with your sister. Rem, sister is perfect. She doesn't have even a single weakness. Beatrice, then insert that guy for a single weakness and use him well. Rem actually wanted to refute her by saying he wasn't a single weakness, but she kept that to herself. In this case, the important thing wasn't the extent of the gap, but rather Beatrice's opinion on him. It was just that the opinion in itself was something that couldn't have possibly been related to the Beatrice back then. Beatrice, what are you laughing about? Rem, I'm sorry, but I'm happy. Miss Beatrice wouldn't worry about me like this back then, after all. Beatrice, that's not really true. I am full of sympathy, I suppose. She pouts. Rem says nothing to the girl that turned away. In actuality, that may have been right. Beatrice was already kind to begin with, and Rem also had thoughts about that sometimes. However, she never spoke about that until now. Rem, Miss Beatrice, a little while ago you said that Subaru influenced both me and my sister, but I kinda think he's influenced you too. Beatrice, that's some pretty severe sarcasm. Rem, but I wasn't trying to be sarcastic. Beatrice, then that's even worse, I suppose. Beatrice snorts her nose with displeasure, and after that, she reached out for the room's door that was right nearby when she turned her back on Rem. That was the parlor, but as someone who was connected to the door of the forbidden archives through her door crossing, it could be none other than the entrance to Beatrice's room. Rem, Miss Beatrice, I'll call you again when it's time for breakfast. When she said those words to the small back of the girl who sought to return to the forbidden archives, Beatrice waved her hand in silence. The distortion of the room then emits, and then the girl vanishes into the forbidden archives, a place different from where she was. Rem, just as I thought, Miss Beatrice has changed too. Rem whispered those words while knowing that they wouldn't reach the vanished girl's ears. Back then, Beatrice would rarely show up to the mansion's breakfasts. She was rewarded for her perfect attendance this past month, since she also didn't turn down this morning's invitation either. When she looked outside the window, she saw Subaru and Emilia leaving the courtyard. They went together like that, headed towards the Erlam village, a place close to the mansion, and should have been going to do radio calisthenics with the villagers, which was something that had become an established event. After that, they'd have breakfast, and then they'd return to the mansion. Rem, I have to hurry. Rem sees off the images of those two who became smaller and also aims to hurry over to the kitchen. Everyone in the mansion gathered for breakfast. Rem hurries over the corridor's carpet while she feels satisfaction from having something like that become an ordinary daily thing. 3. Emilia. Wow, you even made tea today, Rem. It's been a really long time since you did that. Emilia greets Rem, who came to her private room, and says those words like that, smiling with a cheerful face. She had long silver hair and clear bluish-purple eyes. Even for Rem, as someone who saw her older sister Ram as a superior being, this girl had such beautiful looks that you'd admire them spontaneously. It became a sunny day within an instant, and it was around 2:30 p.m. Lunch had already ended, and the people at the mansion each went to do their respective duties. It was now that time to rest. She brought in delicious baked sweets and tea. Supplying Emilia with time to rest was also part of a maid's job. although normally Subaru would be the one to take the initiative and take that role. Rem, Subaru, and sister went to go shopping at the village for today. There's a lot of things on the list, so they weren't able to make it for the break time. Emilia, I see. That's something that's been rare lately. Lately you've been going with either one of them for shopping too. Rem, yes. I asked a selfish favor of them today. I wanted Subaru and sister to get along better. Just like she said in the conversation in the morning, it wasn't as if Subaru and Ram had tension between them. In fact, if you considered just their interactions, then they did get along with each other, and you could even say they had a nice relationship. But as for them, they each had a bit of a dishonest side. She wanted to improve that. Rem. So, I dared to harden my body and my heart. Emilia, I see. Making them get along better, yeah, that's a good thing. I also highly approve of it. Emilia puts her hands together in front of her chest. Her expression suddenly brightens and then she gives Rem her approval. However, she tilts her head after that gesture with a but and says, Emilia, I thought that Subaru and Ram got along really well, though, see, didn't the two of them and Puck go to the mountain to get tea ingredients before? Rem. Yes, thanks to that, sister's assessment of Subaru improved a lot. But I wanted to give them a push after that, and I thought I'd make an opportunity for that push myself. The shopping note asking a favor of the two made it necessary for them to run around in the village, so it did take up time. If they opened up their hearts during that time, then it would be a step forward for Rem's plan for happiness. However, that plan for happiness wasn't just for Ram, but Emilia also had to work together with them. Emilia. What's wrong? Rem. No, it's nothing. Anyways, with that, today I will be a waitress. I can't make tea as good as sister does, and I can't talk about fun things like Subaru, but please forgive me. Rem bows with an expression of her hidden thoughts, pushes the cart, and enters Emilia's room. In comparison to Rem and the others' rooms for employees, Emilia's private room was a remarkably bigger size. It was a design close to Roswell's office. It had an ebony desk inside, a large table in the center, a chair used for receptions, and a bed placed in the room next to it. There were also countless books and documents spread over the reception table and the business desk. Emilia, sorry, there are things scattered around. I'll clean them up quickly. Rem, I am sorry for causing inconvenience to you. She says that, and Emilia starts to clean up the documents spread out on the reception table behind her. Rem also begins to prepare the tea. When she opened up the table safely, there were steaming cups. Emilia, what about your tea? Not going to drink any. Rem, no, I am a mere waitress, so drinking with Lady Emilia would be. Emilia, Ram and Subaru always go drinking together, though. Rem, but then I will accept your offer. For a second, she felt hesitation, but Rem immediately withdrew her previous remarks and participated with her. The maid's rules were complicatedly inconsistent, but it was something Subaru and Ram were doing. She wanted to regard that relationship highly more than she wanted to protect those rules, although it would be disobeying what Frederica taught her. Rem, if we meet again, next time I'll apologize. Rem prepares her tea while apologizing to the senior maid, who was a woman that was away from the mansion for personal reasons. She then takes up Emilia's offer and shared tea time with her. They both tilt their cups and spent the time quietly enjoying the tea's taste and smell. During that time, nothing representing a conversation broke out. Rem notices this and experiences some awkwardness, and she felt very annoyed at her own passivity. Rem naturally had a passive attitude. She was aware of this herself. Ram, of course, was no match for Subaru in terms of assertiveness, as he was someone who overflowed with energy. On the other side, it was also difficult for Emilia to understand her sense of distance with Rem. This situation was a manifestation of that incomprehensible distance, and Rem was disappointed in herself for allowing this to happen. Maybe she shouldn't have taken up Emilia's offer after all. Emilia, it's lovely doing this every now and then, drinking tea quietly, isn't it? Rem, Emilia, usually it would be Subaru talking a lot, and Ram would give me various advice during my studies, but when it's with Rem, it's really relaxing. Emilia lets out a faint smile, and Rem becomes surprised at the girl who said those words. After she took a peek at Emilia's face, it seemed as if there were no signs of her lying in her expression. This meant that those words just now were here true feelings. She was quite embarrassed with how she blamed herself for the silence and how she had looked downward, feeling worthless. Rem, how are your studies going? Emilia, I think you could say they're not going poorly. As for myself, the place I started at is a place more behind than the other people, so I have to work harder. She searches for a topic, looks towards the business desk, and Emilia lowered her eyebrows at Rem, who asked that question. There were a lot of demands for Emilia, a candidate for the next era's ruler, for someone who was a participant of the royal election. As a ruler, she would be burdened with the kingdom, and she of course would have to have a lot of intelligence and education to support that wisdom. Currently, Emilia was at the stage to study that, and it was difficult to say her level was up to standard even with the compliments she received. But still, the royal selection would begin in the near future. Emilia, before that I want to get better even if it's just a little bit. Rem, I understand how you feel. Sister and I did nothing but study right after we were picked up by Master Roswal. At that time when they had just left the village, Rem was ignorant of the outside world, not considering Ram's knowledge. Studying in the mansion was not all there was to one's work and knowledge as a maid. Apart from the minimum reading and writing, they were taught everything they didn't know. That is why Rem had memory of putting earnest efforts into her studies too, just like how Emilia was doing now. Emilia, you and Ram did nothing but study in the beginning. Rem, yes. In particular, I was worse at it than sister, so it was really terrible. Emilia, so you two were like that too. I guess there's nothing like a shortcut after all. I felt some eagerness, but I have to keep working at it, huh? Rem, you get eager too, Lady Emilia. Rem felt it was something surprising and opened her eyes wide at Emilia, who became frail near the end of her sentence. Emilia pouts with a "isn't that a given?" at Rem's reaction and says, Emilia, all the other candidates are really splendid. As it is, I'm viewed as a problem by being a half-elf, so if I wasn't, I would have always been at the forest. She heard that the Great Elior Forest was the forest where Emilia was born and raised. Rem didn't know any more details than that, in regards to her birthplace. Come to think of it, Rem had avoided getting close to Emilia up until now. That was because of Rem's exclusively conservative thoughts. Only her irreplaceable sister and the surrounding world that was attached to her were important to Rem. Rem wasn't interested in Emilia, for better or worse. That's why she tended to avoid participating and supporting more than what Roswal had ordered her. And then Rem thought that Emilia didn't need her assistance, as she was someone who was always positive and worked hard. Rem stayed as herself, while Emilia stayed as herself. It was advisable for both of them to go through while having minimal involvement with each other. That was the mere, weak relationship she thought they had. However, Rem, Lady Emilia, you're really bad at singing. Emilia, what's this all of a sudden? Her calm expression makes a complete 180. Emilia raises a voice at Rem's words with a face that looked like she was going to cry. Rem looks at the change in her facial expression, and with an unconcerned face, she says, Rem, you're surprisingly clumsy with your fingers, and you're a little too honest, so you have a side that's easy to deceive too. Also, you're easy to accept the influences around you, and you cover yourself with a bucket. Emilia, Subaru covered me with a bucket. Also, wasn't it necessary? Rem, yes, that's right. I know everything that happened in this month. Rem knew this much about this person, Emilia, who she tried not to get deeply involved with. She could also talk about more than what she just told. Emilia listens to Rem's murmuring, puts her hand on her face with an awe and a pouting face, and after that she let out a playful-looking smile. Emilia, then I'll get even too. Rem, you are actually a really obstinate person with your stubbornness. Also, you like things like picture books, poetry, and you're a little bad with mayonnaise. And you're really close with Subaru. Rem, nice one, Lady Emilia. I can't refute that. I particularly agree with the last part. Emilia, foo-foo, right, but why did you say that so suddenly? After Emilia stuck her chest out with pride, she tilts her head in curiosity. Rem responds to Emilia's doubt by shaking her head with a no. Rem, there's no big reason for it. It's just that I wanted to make sure of things. It's been half a year since I met you, Lady Emilia, and yet far more things have happened in this past month from that point. Emilia, That's true. Ever since Subaru came along, it's been really busy. You and Ram have been talking much more compared to back then, too. Rem? So, see. Rem searches for words to express the inner thoughts she couldn't explain well and goes into deep thought. Emilia sees Rem projected in her bluish-purple eyes, and she kept the words to continue in silence. She sees that attitude and makes a decision. Back then, Rem was honestly apathetic towards Emilia's courses of action, as long as Roswell didn't care about whether it was as he illustrated or not. But because this time she had feelings different from back then, Rem, I'm assisting Lady Emilia too. At this time for the upcoming royal selection, my abilities are very weak, but I'll do what I can with my poor abilities. Emilia. Rem. I thought I knew Lady Emilia. What I said just now is like the basis for those thoughts. I learned about Lady Emilia. Emilia. They weren't just weird things. Rem. There may have been some weird things. When Rem gave a smile while being teaseful, Emilia pouts with a geez, and right after that, she starts to laugh. Like that, they laughed with each other while sitting across at a table. Emilia. Thanks. It makes me really happy that you said that. This is because of Subaru too, huh? Rem. Yes, Subaru is lovely. Emilia. Yeah, Subaru is a really good kid. Rem and Emilia subtly share their differing opinions, and they drink their cups together. It became a different time than the middle of the day and the tea time that she thought it was. But Emilia. Rem, can I ask a quick request? Rem. Yes, what is it? Emilia. Please give me another cup of tea. For some reason, right now I want to drink Rem's tea. In response to Emilia's request, Rem started to prepare the tea with the deep affection that came from her heart. For the sound of the bell causes Rem to run, and when she started to run, a surprising combination awaited her. Rem, did you call me Master Roswell and the Great Spirit? It was the Roswell's residence at the top floor's terrace in the night. The individuals that met Rem there were Roswell, who was sitting in a chair, and Puck, who was the calm spirit on top of the table next to him. It was a wizard with clown makeup and a great spirit in the form of a gray kitten. There were several existences that were beyond human understanding in the mansion, but among them, Rem cowered in fear to the two people who stood out. Puck, you really do come over immediately when you are called, but you don't have to cower like that. Wheel, I think it'd be hard for you become smaller than me like a scaredy cat anyways. Rem, I apologize for not being able to live up to the Great Spirit's expectations. Roswell, it's not something to take seriously, Rem. That was a Great Spirit joke. Puck, yes, a spirit joke. Spirits don't really think it's funny either, though. Puck wraps around his very long tail around his body and laughs softly with a carefree tone. At Puck's feet on top of the table, there was a glass filled with amber liquid. There was a glass in Roswell's hand to make a pair. The thing these two were doing together was Roswell. Relaxing and having an evening drink with the Great Spirit, huh? Subaru found the family treasure's wine cellar. As a descendant, I cannot help but check out my ancestors' achievements. Then I ran out of Sakana for the sake. Puck. Then it came to call the hostess. And then I called you. Sorry. Rem, hostess, that's Kararaga's way of saying excellent woman, right? Roswell. Rem, I just tooled you. Do not take a Great Spirit's words seriously. Rem is given an order once again from the head of the mansion, and she bowed respectfully. That causes Puck to give a disapproving boo-boo at Roswell, although he gave a nonchalant look at that Great Spirit's behavior. Anyhow, Rem soon figured out the reason she was called over. Rem, I understand now. I'll start the preparations immediately. Do you have any requests? Roswell, nope, I'll leave that up to you. Puck, I'd like mayonnaise, I want mayonnaise. Rem mainly receives Puck's request, and she quickly moves towards the kitchen. In her head, she had a conversation about the ingredients that should have been left over. Sake sakana and mayonnaise. Lately, the latter condiment has been a definite meal of the mansion. The people in the mansion mostly liked the mayonnaise idea Subaru came up with. Rem was a little bad with the strong, sour taste of it, but everyone liked it. In particular, Subaru did, so she highly valued it as a fundamental, unique flavor. People other than him liked it too, including Emilia, Puck, and Beatrice, so she put her powers into using it to create new cooking too. although they weren't asking for that grand of a tour de force with the sakana. Rem takes out the fish from the refrigerator that used a mastone, quickly grills the cut fish, and added mayonnaise. Puck. That jolts my instincts. What a nice smell. Puck says those words like that at Rem, who came back with the sake sakana while washing his face. Puck did look like a kitten, and he really was a spirit, but the way he acted and his tastes were just like a cat. Rem gives a wry smile at that figure while hiding her feelings and placed the plate on top of the table. Rem, if you can leave the plate in glasses like that, then I will clean it up. If you don't need anything else, then I will leave, but… Roswal, good work. I'll have you rest like this for tonight is what I want to say, but may I have you stick along with us for a bit? Rem, yes, I can. Sake is a little, Roswal. I know you don't drink. The smell is also risky. Perhaps you should separate yourself a bit. Rem is told to stay in the terrace, and she stiffens up slightly as she responds to him. Roswal lets out a faint smile at those words and put the glass in his hand next to the table, which was a place opposite of Rem. Rem really had no resistance to sake, although that was pathetic to the Oni clan. All of the Oni were heavy drinkers who liked sake. That was some well-known gossip, but Rem really did see adults drinking excessively while having drinking parties many times. Also, unlike Rem, Ram stayed calm even after drinking. She was the real heavy drinker, a true Oni. Roswal, you sisters are extreme. Even Ram surprises me with the same face she always has, but Rem surprises me too in a different way. You were fine with sake cooking too, oh. Rem, when I'm cooking, perhaps there's a difference in my concentration when it comes to separating the unnecessary from the necessary. At the party, I just couldn't handle my tenseness. Puck, during the previous party, you and Leah were always happy, after all. That was cute in itself, so I kinda think it's fine as long as you just recognize what is moderate. In response to Rem's contemplating while having her head down, Puck said those words with mayonnaise on his whiskers while wrestling with the sakana. The party was the Roswal residence's stargazing party that happened the other day. The hidden wine cellar in the mansion was discovered, and they had a party with the cellar's sake. During that party, Rem showed quite a shameful sight. Rem, I showed a really indecent side of myself at that event. Puck, if it's you embracing Amelia with a bright red face, then it's cute. Even if Betty and I want to get drunk off sake, we can't. I wonder if Betty is different. Her circumstances are a bit different than mine. Puck recites the event in a calm way, and Rem didn't know how to respond. Puck, you make a troubled face whenever you're troubled now, huh? I think that's a good thing. Puck looks at Rem, who was silent, and nods his head while saying those words. When Rem reflexively put her hand on her face in response to those words, Puck focused back on the plate. Roswal, you are like that with jokes too, but your fickle personality is hard to understand. Keeping moderate distance is important for relationships with people. Rem, that's difficult, but I'll try my best so, Master Roswal. Puck says something unexpected to Rem, and Roswal teaches Rem the essentials for relationships. Rem nods at that advice, and after that, she bounced back and called out to Roswal. Just from her calling out to him, Roswal understood what she was getting at. Roswal, it wouldn't be right to make you stay here where there is the smell of liquor drifting about. Sue, I will quickly go into the main topic, Subaru's body. Rem, tell me about Subaru's body. Roswal, about his body, the gate that he used excessively is in an exceptionally bad state. It was so heavy that it sounded serious, but Roswal still said those words. In the middle of the strife at the forest started by the witch beasts, Subaru's mind and body were both exhausted, so he became burdened with quite the amount of debt. In particular, he suffered a remarkable loss to his gate, which was an organ necessary for using magic. He was just about to look over its progress too. Roswal, it's hard to say that me, Ram, Amelia, the Great Spirit, or even Beatrice have an aptitude for healing water magic. Surely the only one with an aptitude for it would be Rem, but that's for operating on external injuries, so stuff inside aren't in her area of expertise. Puck, that would only be using it recklessly, so it is worrying. It was Puck getting into other people's business, but nothing could be done about how she couldn't deny it. Anyhow, there was a reason behind Roswal's preface. If there wasn't a way to heal his body, Rem, someone who is an expert with examining insides will take care of Subaru. Roswell. He has achieved something great from the incident that happened the other day, where the damage didn't spread in the village and the mansion. Which means that I have the biggest obligation to reward him for that. Thus, I've made various sinister plans with the Great Spirit. Roswell spread his hands and joked around, but Rem felt relieved by the sincerity of those words. The way Roswell spoke meant that he already had a solution. That was what Rem understood, as someone who worked for him for these past 10 years. The question was, what was the solution, and how would Puck be involved? Roswell. There's merit. There's even a long-awaited opportunity. Sue, I thought to guide the kingdom's best healer for him. That's why I requested a present from the Great Spirit. Puck, you don't really need my permission either. Putting aside how it was at that place, Roswell is the one that holds that right, isn't he? You know how I am, and Leah shouldn't interfere as well, as long as her relatives are safe. Roswell. Although, it would be bad if your good mood got hurt, and you become big again. Puck, come on, I rarely do that. Geez, you sure hold grudges. They were laughing with each other in good moods, but Rem knew that the conversation was actually dangerous. When Roswell went to the forest to see Amelia for the royal selection, he clashed with Puck, who opposed it. As a result, she heard that the topography changed. However, Rem put that aside as something minor, and she turns her attention towards the part she was given. It was the reason Roswell called Rem out to this place. Roswell, you have a face filled with determination even without me saying anything, but I'll dare to clearly give my orders. Rem, I give you the role to observe Subaru. Or rather, I give you the role to watch over him so that he doesn't do anything unreasonable. Rem, in other words, Master Roswell, you're giving me that, a just cause. Roswell, you've really bent the meaning of your circumstances, but I don't dislike it. Rem, you've ordered to me to watch over Subaru. As someone who does my best to avoid stepping on Subaru's shadow and avoid breathing in Subaru's breath as much as possible, at morning, at night, every day. Puck, you restrict yourself like that? I didn't know that. Puck finds out about Rem's several daily voluntary restrictions she established, and he opens his eyes wide. But he cannot be surprised. That was merely the beginning. He becomes afraid of Rem's restraints no longer being in effect. He didn't place as much restrictions on himself like that, nor were they as good as those. Rem, but it still isn't the time when I should talk about all of it. Puck, Rem, anyways, I humbly accept the order. From here, I'll follow your order and I'll follow Subaru around. It's Master Roswell's order. There's nothing wrong with it. Rem pays no attention to Puck, who tilted his head in doubt, and she gives a salute to Roswell as she straightens her back. After that, she moves smoothly back to the terrace, and she showed an elegant curtsy there. Rem, all right then, please excuse me. Master Roswell, great spirit, sweet dreams. Rem gives a response that sounded more poetic than usual, and she gallantly leaves the terrace. They see off that spirit, and then Roswell and Puck look at each other. Then, Puck points the tip of his tail towards the table, towards Roswell's glass, and says, Puck, the girl was probably downwind, huh? Roswell, I wasn't aiming for what just happened right now either, okay? They said these words. The clown and the kitten take a sip of their glasses and resume their evening drinking as they say, oh wheel. 5 Rem. I knocked. Excuse me. Rem knocks the door as if caressing it and invades the room in a way that made it seem like she slipped in. The lights were already off. Inside this room, what rose into the darkness was a light blue luminous point that turned on a mysterious-looking light. In short, it was just the light of Rem's eyes, who was immersed in the smell of sake. Rem, I knocked properly. She says that reminder again and puts up a guard. Rem silences her footsteps and steps into the room. It was the place she frequently passed by every night and every morning. Even if she closed her eyes, she would reach the place she intended to visit. But closing her eyes wouldn't be fulfilling her objective, so she would have her eyes open. Rem, Subaru is cute. She had a black-haired boy lying down on the bed reflected in her eyes. As soon as that happened, Rem relaxed her face. She had more of a faint smile than a normal smile. This was how she would enjoy Subaru's sleeping face daily before she went to bed in her own room. Rem thought there were good points in Subaru when it was the morning or the night, while Subaru thought they were annoying points. And then she had conflicting feelings with the gap between her usual lust and her feelings of guilt, but today they were clear. This is because tonight wasn't out of her self-interest, but was a duty given to by Roswal. Rem, I've been ordered to watch over him at a distance where I can feel him, so it can't be helped. While giving a broad interpretation of the master's orders, Rem gets close to the bed and kneels on the bed. After matching the position of Subaru's eyes, who was sleeping, the distance between their faces shortened at once. As a result, they were close enough to feel each other's breath. Rem, is it okay for you to be this defenseless in front of me, Subaru? Subaru did not respond to the talking that was quiet like a whisper. Subaru surprisingly wasn't turning over and continued to sleep, while not knowing about Rem's invasion. Even his breathing was quiet, contrasting with the liveliness he had when he was awake. She incidentally is fascinated by his sleeping face more than usual, and Rem shamefully blushes. She came here intending to strictly control herself, and yet what a fickle Oni she was. Since back then, Rem wasn't able to give genuine approval to her sister, Ram's adoration of being okay, with even dedicating both her mind and body to Roswal. It was because of the difference between her respect she had towards Roswal and the deep affection Ram had towards Roswal. But that difference even turned into an inferiority complex too, without Rem knowing it. But the person who suddenly came here was Natsuki Subaru. His existence became bigger in her, and she became able to understand the same feelings of adoration Ram had towards Roswal. She came to understand that she really was passionate, and that it was something that could not be restricted. She puts her kneecaps to the bed, and then Rem puts the upper half of her body onto the bed. While looking at Subaru's face, right by her, and his figure, she says, Rem, you have fingers of a boy, and yet they are slender and lovely. Your face while you sleep is calm like a baby. Your hair is hair that will turn into bed hair after sleeping if you don't dry it properly. She talks about the interesting parts of Subaru one by one. But none of these things were faults. This was the terrifying side of Rem's fever. Rem, lips! She concentrated her look on the particularly defenseless point on his defenseless sleeping face. His lips were slightly open to breathe, but they were so close that if she put her face a little closer, she would touch them. She could feel his breath. If this was a restriction too, she would be breaking it. Rem. But as soon as she became aware of that restriction, Rem's world quickly starts to return to the usual. She was immersed in the smell of sake, but it wasn't much. It was a matter of the amount she sniffed. Once she sobered up, she controlled herself sternly, and the girl who could control herself from touching the person she fell in love with returned. Rem, what a fool I am. After the thoughts tinged with the smell of sake cleared up, regret and shame start to overwhelm her. While blushing from that shame, Rem grinds her teeth at her patheticness and stands up. Roswal ordered her to simply keep a moderate distance and observe him. That didn't change. Even if she broadly interpreted it and used it like a just cause, it was extremely arrogant disrespect. Rem. Subaru, you can't seduce me with this and that. Rem smiles as she accuses Subaru of a crime he had no memory of committing as he sleeps. Just like she usually did, she withdrew herself without doing anything. She decides that she'd apologize to Subaru for what she did tonight tomorrow. And finally, Rem playfully touches Subaru's lips with her white finger and Rem. The moment she touched his lips with his finger, Subaru moves with a desire to have something in his mouth and takes in her finger with his mouth. He licks her finger with a hot, rough feelings. Rem's thoughts climax, and she falls into a state of confusion. That licking didn't continue for long, and Rem's finger was immediately released, but Rem is dumbfounded as she looks at her right hand's index finger. She couldn't move from that spot. That finger was so slippery and wet with saliva that she knew it clearly even in this darkness, as the mysterious-looking light followed it around. Rem, will this be narrowly forgiven? The choice to wipe it with a towel or an apron quickly disappear from her head. Inside of Rem, there were two options in regards to this finger, to do it or to give up. Rem created all kinds of restrictions for when she'd confront Subaru. But what happened just now was completely out of her expectations, and she never thought about measures against this. She didn't because this was obviously a once-in-a-lifetime event that wouldn't come by again if she let it pass by her. It was a miraculous moment. But the devil inside her and the angel inside her butt heads, and the disturbance starts a whirlpool. She was a proud survivor of the Oni clan, but she was enjoying her sudden good luck. But the only person who was conscious in this place was Rem. Nobody was looking. If Ram found out, what would she think? Was this an action that she could be proud of to her perfect sister? She honestly hated how the moment she had her finger licked vanished from her memory. Two opinions conflicted severely with each other inside of her head. Rem's breathing was rough, and it became intense. Sweat appears on her forehead. Her whole body was stiff with tension. She was worrying, struggling, and I can't do that. A white horn grows from her forehead, and she was in utmost pain. Rem pushes her finger wet with saliva against the apron and wiped it. A sense of emptiness filled up her heart within an instant, but she ignored that as she thought, this is for the best. Right, Subaru. She overcomes her time of distress and sought to turn to Subaru's face with a frail smile. However, those words were interrupted, and Rem held her breath in astonishment. Rem puts both of her hands together on the bed, and she breathed roughly. Arms went around the upper half of Rem's body, and the man used his physical strength to forcibly pull down that girl who stiffened up. Rem. Eek! That sudden event causes her to blank out once more. She loses her cool in embarrassment as a fever rises on her face, and Rem understood the situation she was in with a blush on her face. She was laid down on the bed facing upwards, and she was embraced. Her uniform gets wrinkled from that reckless action, and her felt like her skirt was riding up too. It was a really shameless appearance. He embraced Rem even closer with his surprisingly strong arms as she recognized the reality. They were both in each other's embrace, and it made Rem's heart jump so much that it seemed like it would explode. The angel and devil inside of Rem start fighting once again about the situation. It was not Rem being assertive, but rather him being assertive Subaru. Munya. Rem hears the sleep talking from the person she is troubling inside of her head that was in chaos, and Rem becomes exhausted at once. If she tried to move around her head, Subaru was still in a deep sleep, and he also wasn't aware of how he was holding tight onto a large human body pillow. That's right. Subaru isn't like that after all. There was relief in that whisper, along with some disappointment. She had complex feelings for the action that wouldn't happen when he was conscious. Thus, to make up for the bothersome part, she enjoyed his temperature and smell with her whole body. And then, it can't be helped. I tried my best to resist, but Subaru won't wake up, so I can't move. So, I'll continue to resist like this until Subaru wakes up. She leaves those words that were only deceptive, and Rem rubs her nose and chest against Subaru like that, deciding to continue experiencing it comfortably. There was also a just cause to it. It was fine to have a day like this once in a while. She allows herself to understand herself like that, and Rem starts to slowly doze off as well. She starts to yield the doziness. The next day, Ram came to wake up Subaru, and she saw him and Rem, who both slept in and were in an intimate situation. A situation where Subaru was given a violent scolding broke out with him not being able to argue about it. Everything was scenes of Rem's very ordinary happy day. The end.